You dig what I'm saying? If they all hollers, I'ma count it fast. Yeah, I wanted money, I couldn't enjoy class.
Drake is an artist who has had such a huge stranglehold on hip-hop for the better part of the last 6 years, almost unquestionably. Ever since Take Care in 2011, there has only been one real moment where Drake could have lost that top spot, and that was to Kendrick with the whole Good Kid Mad City era. But I think Drake was just able to hold on to that top spot, despite Kendrick gnawing at his feet. However, with the huge beast of an album that was Damn, and the sales and the reception and the sheer chaos of that release period, it seems that we have hit a second bump in Drake's reign, and adding to this was the questionable release of More Life, which has been met with some mixed reception and some shaky numbers. But has Kendrick overtaken Drake? In this video today, we're going to look at the history between the two, flesh out their background, and apply it to right now to answer that question. Thanks for tuning into the channel today, guys. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe. I do a lot of hip-hop focused think pieces and opinion pieces, and also follow me on all social medias, Instagram, Twitter, etc, etc. But enough talking and let's dive right in.
Hey, what's your name?
I'm Charlie. What's your name?
Where you from?
I'm from Australia.
Australia.
So why has Drake always been #1 though? Well, really it's been a combination of his immense commercial success, his sheer relevancy, and his great bodies of work. Even when Drake isn't dropping projects, he is hotter than any other rapper. He uses remixes, features, and loose songs as a way of keeping his name on the tip of everybody's tongues, and at the top of everybody's playlists. But you already knew all of this, and Drake's relevancy is well documented. But the important question right now is, how has Drake been able to stay #1 over Kendrick? The reason why the Good Kid Mad City era has been the biggest threat to Drake's throne is because Kendrick was that artist that the world had been waiting on, a person to connect and get respect from the hip-hop purist and the mainstream head at the same time. Everybody was waiting for another lyrical person who would be their quote hip-hop savior, whatever the fuck that means, and Kendrick knew that, and that's exactly what he delivered. Not only did he deliver an album that is an unarguable classic and one of the best modern hip-hop albums, but he came through with a friendly sound, with hits as well, and quite a few of them. Swimming Pools and Poetic Justice both serve as the commercial hits, and outside of that, Mad City and Backseat Freestyle are cult classics, in the sense that they didn't have that mainstream success, but they had that raw underground connection with the youth. Nobody was able to connect the underground and mainstream quite like Kendrick did in 2012, and this was only elevated by the whole Control verse fiasco, and I think in this era, Kendrick was so close to dethroning Drake. But what was Drake able to do to stop this? Well, firstly, a crucial factor was that Take Care was viewed as a really great body of work. Although it didn't quite get that same love from hip-hop purists as Good Kid Mad City, by all means it was widely praised, from critics to fans, and it won a lot of people over. So even though Kendrick had Good Kid, Drake had Take Care, which was, and is still seen as his best work pretty much universally. And secondly was the sheer commercial success of Take Care. The first week sales of Take Care more than tripled Good Kid Mad City's, and on top of this is the hits. I mean, just from Take Care alone, Drake had 2 4x platinum hits, a 3x platinum hit, a platinum hit, and 4 gold hits. That is quite literally a full EP of straight certified hits. And not to mention the album went to go on platinum 4 times over. And whether you like it or not, when you discuss who is running the game and who is #1, things like chart success, hits, and sales play an integral role in discerning who is #1. Both great bodies of work and commercial success are needed for an artist to be #1. As mentioned earlier, Drake has been able to stay relevant through features, and 2012 was no different. Whereas Kendrick was able to get 2 single gold plaques from Good Kid Mad City for both Swimming Pools and Poetic Justice, Drake was able to outdo Kenny with no album or no project in 2012, just off features. He got 1 double plat, 1 single plat, and 2 gold. So although Kendrick was able to have such relatively big mainstream success with such a monumental well-received album, Drake was able to stay #1 for a few reasons. Firstly, pure chart dominance, both in his own songs and through his features, which kept him insanely relevant even when he wasn't dropping a project in 2012. And secondly, his sales dominance, with Take Care outselling Good Kid Mad City 3 times over in each of their respective first weeks. But lastly, and crucially, Take Care delivered as a body of work, and all the success it had commercially was backed up by the fact it was a great project, so Take Care had love and respect both commercially and critically / by the fans. Now that we understand the dynamic that existed before, we can begin to dive into the dynamic right now and look at what has changed and why it's important. And let's break this down into 3 categories: critical reception, fan reception, and commercial success. Firstly, critical reception, and this is a category that I always say isn't overly important, but it needs to be mentioned. On Metacritic, Damn sits at 96 and More Life sits at 79. However, do I think these accurately reflect the albums? Not entirely, because critics are dick riding Kendrick like there's no tomorrow, and it's embarrassing that More Life has a higher Metacritic score than Take Care. But it is what it is, and you take critical reception with a grain of salt. But for what it's worth, Kendrick does win for this one, and to have such a high score on Metacritic is an achievement in and of itself. More importantly, however, is fan reception, and Damn has been received to much acclaim everywhere on the internet. Everywhere you look, it's really living up to the hype, and people are fucking with it. Now, do I think people are overdoing it? Possibly, because people are dick riding Kendrick like there's no tomorrow, and they're getting caught up in the hype. But even when the dust settles, I think the general opinion is that Kendrick really delivered on this album, and came through with a great body of work that could be considered better than his previous attempts. Whereas comparably, people seem to be simply mad with More Life. People see it as lazy and uninteresting for the most part. I've even seen a lot of hate for it, and people just calling it straight trash. And on top of this, I think all of the hype surrounding Damn has almost consumed More Life, to the extent that people forget it was even released, and have almost stopped listening to it. Furthermore, I think More Life confirmed a worry of Drake fans that he was overexposing himself, that he was releasing too much music and oversaturating the market, to the extent that people would eventually get tired of listening to him, and the sales really confirm this. And this is the kicker: this is the first time that Kendrick has ever outsold Drake in first week sales. Damn sold just over 600k first week, whereas More Life sold just over 500,000. But why is this the kicker? Because for the longest, no matter what Kendrick stans have argued about the Grammys, argued about critical reception, argued about, oh my god, T-Pap is the greatest album ever, it got like a 10 from Anthony Fantano, Drake stans were able to simply rely on his sales as the upper hand, and go, well, numbers don't lie, Drake is number 1. Now, do I always agree with this argument? No, but in this particular case it does hold some weight when you were talking about pure dominance in the game. So this is monumental, and it really solidified the general feeling that Drake had worn himself out, and that people were beginning to get sick of the overabundance of his music. Also, the fact that Humble was able to debut so high, and then go on to reach number 1, showed that the Kendrick that everybody loved was back. There was definitely a notion from certain audiences on the internet that T-Pap didn't have any replay value, it didn't have any Mad Cities or backseat freestyles, and that it got boring. Humble proved that this was no longer an issue for Kendrick, and it cemented that Kendrick hadn't lost the ability to make a song that really connects with everybody. It really is amazing how Kendrick is able to have a number 1 hit with a song that hadn't been memed to death, or that stood out as an obvious hit. Sure, the beat is funky and the chorus is catchy, but give that to another artist and I question whether it would have been a hit. Not only this, but there have been so many songs that have done so well. Like, how the fuck is DNA at number 4 in its first week on the chart? That's a huge feat. And I do realise that streaming now holds more weight than it did before in Billboard's algorithm, but still, heaps of tracks are shaping up to be potential hits, and I'd say it's pretty likely that Damn will see more chart success than More Life. So everything is pointing towards Kendrick as an undeniable number 1 right now, right? I mean, he has the critical reception, the fan reception, and he finally has more commercial success than Drake, which has been his Achilles heel in this Drake vs Kendrick discussion. But now we get to all the excuses that Drake fans have been spitting out, that More Life was just a playlist, that it wasn't an album, and it was marketed as a B-sides and it didn't get the proper promotion. And to be honest, all biases aside, this is a literal fact, and Drake stans are right. But only to an extent. More Life was definitely not given the promotion or platform to succeed in quite the same way that Views was. So in a sense, it isn't surprising that it sold poorly, or that it hasn't seen quite the success that Views has. And this undoubtedly does justify and lessen the blow that Kendrick delivered Drake with Damn. But in saying that, right now, taking everything into account, Kendrick has overtaken Drake. But it isn't like Kendrick is number 1, full stop, end of discussion. It's more like Kendrick is number 1. asterisk. And that asterisk is that we need to see what Drake's response is to this. And that will cement Kendrick as either the number one, solidified, or the interim number one. If Drake comes back in late 2017 or early 2018 and delivers a well-received project that does a milli first week, Drake is number one again, no doubt in my mind, because Kendrick probably won't drop an album till 2019 at the earliest. So Drake with that project will be able to win over the people again and show that he was really number one all along. But Drake could very well be in a shambles right now, and he could come back swiftly with a rushed project in an attempt to stop the bleeding from Damn, and that could be a huge flop and a huge disappointment, hurting him even more and cementing Kendrick as the number one.
CJ. Did the Cali vocals come in yet?
So concluding this video right here today, it's pretty hard to deny that Kendrick is number one right now. Even though More Life was a glorified B-sides project, the mammoth of Damn is just too much, and it is a step up in nearly every single possible way for Kendrick. It's Kendrick's strongest first week sales ever, it's his most songs he's ever had on the Hot 100 at once, and it's his highest charting single ever. And the fan reception and love for the album has been enormous. Whereas comparably, More Life was a decline in nearly every single aspect for Drake, aside from critical reception, but that only increased by one from Take Care anyway. It was a decline in sales and it was a decline in fan reception. But as I said earlier, there is still that asterisk, and it's not like Kendrick is a certified number one right now. The ball is in Drake's court right now, and you absolutely know he wants that number one spot back, and is probably devising a plan as we speak. But hopefully we don't get another classic Drizzy airball. Alright guys, that's all from me today, thanks a lot for watching. Let me know what you thought about the video and who you think is number one. Please like, subscribe, and follow me in all social medias for more.